Hey there, I'm Sue Richey with Richey Property Management. And you know what, lately we've had a lot of questions from many of the homeowners that we manage properties for about why are these expenses, why are these repair costs so expensive? They've definitely gone up. We've seen an increase in the cost of repairs in general, and since COVID, continue to tick up. And so today I'm having an honest conversation with one of the vendors that we use in our business. He does renovations, he does all kinds of things. And I wanted to ask him and his opinion on what he's seeing in terms of expense. Like, why are all these things going up? Obviously, we know materials are cost more. Labor. What about labor? Why are all these expenses going up? We have seen this a little bit more gradually, but I know for a lot of homeowners, when you don't have repairs regularly and you didn't have to replace something until, several years later, it's a big shock, right? That just to see the difference in the cost. So I wanted to be able to hear it from his perspective and have this discussion so we can share it with you all so you can see what's really happening. And I know that, with various changes in tariffs and different things that are going on right now, as we make this video, we're likely to see a lot more price increases in terms of the cost of homes being built and various things. So let's get to it with my conversation with Will. Today, I am joined with Will Lang, who is the founder and owner of a company called Digs and Roost. They're local to us here in Northern Virginia. Will's background is quite extensive, and I'll let him get into it, but he does general contracting. They do, home building, renovations, all kinds of things. And he's done some things for clients and other, people in our sphere. And so thanks again, Will, for being here, but I'll let you explain a little bit more about what you do, and then we can get into our discussion about, costs of everything going up in our industry.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I appreciate it, and hopefully we can try to shed some light, at least from our vantage point or unique vantage point. So a little bit about me. I've been a home builder. Well, I wanted to be a home builder from high school age, and started right out of college and worked for a semi-custom home builder for close to 27 years, 27, 28 years. And then just over the last few years, kind of went off on my own, doing general contracting. But prior to that, my entire career was land acquisition, home design, home construction, and that's all here in the Northern Virginia market. So, and that was up through really a little bit past beyond COVID. And then, now I'm doing a little bit more varied, where before it was a lot more land development and, designing new semi-custom homes for communities. Now I'm doing additions and renovations and remodeling and eventually maybe getting back into custom home building again. But right now it's kind of the same, just a different side of the apple, but all basically the same stuff.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a weird time, and you've seen it all. You've been doing this for a long time. I've been doing this for 25 years. We've seen the big rise in, I remember back in the early 2000s was just new construction, custom homes, all kind, because there was just the demand and the space and the market was going crazy. And then we've all been through the downturn and all of that. I think, for purposes of this conversation, we could talk about a lot of things. We have been hearing from a lot of our clients about why are things costing so much? And this is more in terms of these kind of smaller repairs, mainly. We know that the cost of renovations and different things have different price tags, but just in terms of, they don't see this every day. And we've seen this gradual increase in the cost of, replacing a toilet or fixing this or appliances and, things like that. I think when we really started seeing it was kind of around COVID and a little bit after. Would you say that's sort of when you started to see it too?
Oh yeah, COVID was unprecedented. The rise in costs of things, and then triggers a whole slew of other things that add to the cost. I was also an economics major, graduating from college. So this is all very interesting to me, but things kind of regulated a little bit several years after COVID, but it took years to kind of shake the stink off of what COVID kind of put on the entire industry, just for
Yeah.
everybody to kind of get back to kind of a semblance of normal, if there is one.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, for those of us seeing this, it's because it's been gradual. I mean, we know that it's happening. We just don't see it the same. If you haven't had a repair or something major in a few years, it's a shock, And so I think, that's part of why I wanted to have this conversation, to help explain to people that it's not that we're not, utilizing good contractors or cost-effective types of contractors. We, in our company, we're not going to use the cheapest guy in town, because we want these things done right and we want them done well. We don't need to use the most expensive people either. We want people who provide good value, but we are looking out for the bottom line and for cost for our clients. But everyone has increased cost, including us, right?
Sure.
What would you say from your perspective in terms of, what have you seen the most, maybe, what's gone up the most? What is there something that stands out that you can say,
I would say the most, I mean, the things that you're immediately seeing price changes on are like finished products, like appliances, fixtures, things that are produced in a box that you buy off the shelf.
Yeah.
Because those things are generally wholly manufactured outside of the US, and then they get here, and I am seeing on appliances and like that, just like I said, fixtures.
Yeah.
I'm feeling that pain. The other things are soon to come, I'm imagining.
Yeah, I think there's more of that to come for sure. Definitely appliances is one of those, because that's also, for us, that's a very common, not only repair item, but a replacement type of item too. And they've gone up a lot, and I think that's definitely a shocker for a lot of people. What are you seeing in terms of labor for, your subs or other people that are working for you? Are people available? Because I know that, during COVID too, you couldn't even find people to do work, right?
Well, for I don't know if it's appropriate for this conversation, but for issues unrelated to tariffs, there is a somewhat of a strain in the labor market right now, just from the people that are typically on my job sites. We're having that is becoming an issue, but it's not related to tariffs.
Right, but so you're having a harder time finding them, or they're requiring more money, which means you have to then pass that on to the consumer, your client, right?
Sure. I mean,
Yeah.
you're in the industry long enough, you try as best you can to stick with the people that because construction is not black and white. Everything changes, and just like you said, you demand a certain type of finished product, maybe not the cheapest, but certainly the best value. The only way that I can provide that is the guys that I'm working with, they know what I expect on each job site. I know how they work. I know if their reliability and that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
I try to keep the same people, and that's all the subcontractors. I mean, honestly, there's painters, plumbers, roofers that I've worked with for 20 some years. It's the same people.
Yeah, well, that's good for to have that consistency, because not every general contractor has that, and not, and for the one-off, like the small guy who's doing this just kind of handyman work and doing it on their own, I don't know, they don't have the economies of scale that you might have in terms of purchasing power and for different things. I don't know. For other kinds of vendors, are you seeing yourself negotiating, or is there just not much of that for other kinds of supplies and stuff like that?
I think I guess to touch on the larger issue. So Not yet. Certainly I have been talking with like my lumber yards who provide a, the bulk of things, whether it's
Yeah.
lumber, drywall, like all the things that we use to construct whatever we're doing.
Hmm.
And there are a lot more conversations of like, hey, how are things panning out? Here's how I see it happening. There's so much uncertainty, and it's not too dissimilar to what happened in COVID, but there's a lot of uncertainty from my clients to me to the lumber yards or whoever the people are that are providing the products that you're using. And so the smart ones, like for instance, I have a couple lumber yards where they kind of locked in the price of lumber for
Hmm.
a time, right? And they
Right.
bought a whole bunch of stuff
Right.
thinking we're coming into the spring market. This is kind of a real busy time, not only for home builders, they're pushing stuff out in the spring market. You've got homeowners who are buying houses and doing projects. And even for like renovations, that kind of stuff. A lot of people are doing their projects now. And
Right.
so the smart lumber yards, they all bought a lot of stuff. But what's going to happen potentially is they're going to run through that stuff, right? We're in this
Hmm.
busy time.
Hmm.
And if and again, how apropos that we're doing this today on the day that tariffs are going to be kicking
Yeah,
out.
exactly.
But what might potentially happen, which is what happened in COVID, is the minute those things kick in, the lumber yards, for instance, they're not going to buy one piece of lumber unless it's already pre-purchased, right? So they're going
Yeah.
to just turn off the spigot immediately. And so they're only going they're only going to buy exactly what it is they know somebody's already pre-bought. And um, not small guys like me, but the big guys like the big home builders, they kind of
Hmm.
drive it, right? And they're gonna,
Right.
if they know that prices are gonna immediately spike like they did in COVID, unless they have to, they might just pull the plug on building.
Yeah.
And so then what happens is you have this kind of like, there's, for a time, there's only a few people that can get the stuff. The lumber yards or whomever that are supplying things are only going to be selling to the big people that are paying their bills, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, like I don't drive the prices of my lumber yard. I feed off of the extra stuff that they have in their yard.
Right.
And so then what happens with the manufacturers is they don't want to. The lumber yards don't want to extend themselves and buy a bunch of lumber that maybe the tariffs change in 2 months, right? And they go back down, and then all of a sudden they paid too much for it. And then the people that are manufacturing the stuff are like, well, no one's buying, and then they shut it off
Yeah.
or they slow it down and they start laying people off. And then what happens is not only are the prices going up, now there's this demand and supply issue where there's a lot of confusion where now there's not even a product to buy and the prices even go higher. And that's what happened in COVID.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're
It's
kind
like a chicken and egg thing, really, because it's like you need this to happen to keep supplying things, right? And as you said, it becomes a supply and demand thing. I feel like the other thing, based on what you just described, is that there's probably going to be a lot more delay of things too. Like if you don't have lumber, for example, readily available because you don't have it because you haven't ordered it and you're only going to get it when people need it, isn't there going to be some kind of a delay in production? You know what I mean?
absolutely
Yeah.
sure. And then even if it was, for instance, we're just talking tariffs, like, great, we stopped taking the bulk of our lumber from Canada or South America or China, where most of it comes.
Hmm.
How long would it take for the US manufacturers to fill that demand that we lost or the supply that we lost?
Hmm.
And could they even, for that matter? So
Yeah.
it's a ripple effect that really can take a long time to work itself out.
Yeah. I
And
think
you
it's
saw that with appliances, like back in COVID, there were appliances that took a year to get.
exactly, exactly like it. And then things kind of settled a bit, but I mean, like windows, for example, like we do replacement windows, we have a part as part of our company and our contracting business. That those prices not only went up, but there were significant delays and it's settled, but now everything's shaken up again. And are there things that you were kind of, I guess, any strategies that you're sort of implementing in your business to help maybe offset some of those costs or mitigate? I mean, there's only so much you can do because like all of us, everybody has, you know, this fear of like everything going up. And there is only so much you can do, but as a small business owner, is there anything you are doing? I mean, to
Well,
help
you try
manage
to
this?
lock in the price. I'm sorry. Yeah, you try to lock in the prices as best you can. But
Yeah.
construction too is, I've just started an addition, um,
Hmm.
and it's pretty sizable. It's basically building a new house attached to an existing house.
Yeah.
And so, this is a 4 to 6 month process that I don't have the space to pre-buy the interior doors. I don't have the space to buy the tubs and everything. Like, you have a construction sequence, and you just can't. You do your best to try to order the things when you need them, or if you can, order ahead, or
Hmm.
just try to lock in prices as best you can. I mean, there is an
Yeah.
issue too where Joe Blow homeowner who doesn't want to just decides, oh, it's too much for me to do a deck, so I'm not going to do a deck right now. But for
Right.
this addition, it's been in the works for a couple years, and now we're kind of in it and building it. There's no turning back. The train's already left the station.
Yeah. Well, in those cases, for sure, like you just got to finish it out. But I think, as we've seen just from hesitancy in home buying when interest rates were high. I mean, you saw a little bit of that. Washington's a little unique. I mean, we saw plenty of people buying. There's a little bit of a hiccup, but it wasn't tremendous. But that's a different thing than, people who are, like you said, well, I'm going to put a deck on or change my deck. And, what's that going to, like, why am I going to do that right now if I don't have to? Because it's going to be that much more expensive. There's probably going to be, for all contractors, there's going to be some pullback on these sorts of renovations, would be my thought. That would be my expectation, based on that, and just general consumer spending across the board. I mean, just food is going to be more expensive, right? And
Sure, right. I agree.
yeah, and it's just we touched on tariffs, and you're right. It is kind of funny that we're recording this today, but this stuff it's not to get into this political discussion, but the fear and all of that affects that supply and demand, right? And then there is going to take some time to see how these things actually trickle down, because no matter what, you can't build plants in the as fast as people need it, and many of these things, and so much of it comes from elsewhere that I don't know. That's going to be a whole different thing. But I feel like I think we're doing the same thing. It's just we're going to try to do our best to manage the costs and expenses for our clients, but there is a lot of it that's just plain out of our control. And you mentioned, as a smaller builder, you're not going to drive the that demand, like with the lumber, for example. But I think about even like smaller investors or flippers, or people who, are just looking to, the cost of all of that too is going to go up and affect their eventual return on investment or profitability in any one specific deal,
Sure,
I mean,
those margins are generally pretty slim, and it doesn't take
yeah,
much of a hiccup with interest rates or whatever it is to
yeah,
kind of cause some
yeah,
problems. So
yeah,
I agree.
yeah. Well, we're gonna remain hopeful and optimistic, and again, just control what we can control. I mean, we've all been through, and as all business owners, people have been through all kinds of things, right? Ups and downs, whether it's real estate or anything else. But we just continue to persevere. We just hope that, the bigger economic and political changes don't either, I don't know, either last, or they don't, or they change, so that it's a little bit more favorable for consumers and small business owners.
Sure, I think just my hope is that better heads prevail, and that we, tariffs on, and not to discount, wine, for instance.
Yeah.
If we're taxing wine coming from France, is very different than taxing lumber that shuts down an industry, right?
Correct.
So
Right.
I don't know. That's way above my pay grade to figure that out, but it kind of seems counterintuitive to put everything at a standstill without an answer to, for instance, back to that lumber. If lumber doesn't come from elsewhere to meet our demand, can the U.S. just, how quickly can it pivot to then fill that demand? And can it even do that? And I don't know the answer to that. How long would it take?
Exactly. I don't either. I think so. The bottom line really is for us, we do our best to manage our costs for our clients, right? You, us, anybody else who is working with consumers affected, any business. And I also think from, at least the foreseeable future, I don't see really any decrease in costs of all of these things, from labor to again, appliances, materials, and all of those things. And I think it's just what we're all going to have to deal with, not just hope for the best. I don't mean, we just do the best we can do. That's,
sure.
I don't see any.
I think there's some things that I've done, like in the process of clients picking things out, it may not be totally applicable to what you guys do, but when you're building an addition, for instance, and someone has a budget to pick out light fixtures or whatever it is, I do my best to give them a budget, and then if they can find something cheaper, great. I also have it and I give them credit for that. And then if I, in my projecting of what I think it's going to cost things, there have been instances where I was pleasantly surprised, and something came in a lot less, and I'm happy to pass that on to my clients, because at the end of the day, if we're all saving money and we get the same product at the end, then everyone's happy.
Yep, I agree. And we do our best to do the same, but anyway, well, wish we had, I wanted to have this discussion. I wish we had more answers, but it's just a weird time, and there's not much more other than, hearing it from your perspective is important. I think it's good for people to see that and know that, we're all feeling it. So, and we're all doing what we can do to control it. But
we'll know more today. I guess by the end of the day, we might have to have a follow-up call.
Yeah, right. I know. Well, we're all keeping our eyes on it, but I appreciate you, Will, and I appreciate all you do for our clients and our team. And I'm going to put all your information in the description below. So anybody who's here in Northern Virginia, if you're looking for work to be done in your house, building additions, whatever, Will does amazing work. So I highly recommend
appreciate
him.
that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, but thank you again, and we'll talk to you soon. And have a great day.
All right, thank you. Have a good one.
Thanks. So there you have it. I hope that was gave you a little bit of insight as to the perspective of a contractor that we work with. It's tough because nobody knows what's going on, but there's no doubt that the cost of everything has gone up. And again, in our business, I think the biggest thing people see is appliances, really. And because those are things we are constantly changing, constantly repairing. But all in all, the costs have gone up. And I wish it was different. Believe me, we don't want to have these conversations with homeowners, but it's important to understand that, these are the times we're in. And we will work very, very hard to do our best to manage the expenses for you. I own real estate too. I see the same kinds of things. I don't want to, but it is what it is. So anyway, I hope that conversation was helpful, and we're going to keep up with it. We're going to see what's happening. We're going to keep up with these changes, and we'll continue to report back on the sorts of things that we see. So thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.